Welcome. My name is Madeline Sharf. This is my teach back assignment. I decided to do it on the skin or our cutaneous membrane. So let's hop right into it. The skin is your largest organ by weight, which I thought was pretty cool. So starting outward going in, right? We have our outermost layer called our epidermis. That consists of stratified squamous epithelial tissue. It consists of these 5 layers here. The cells in these layers grow from bottom up. So that. Then we have our dermis, right? And that consists of 2 layers. We have our papillary layer, that's our more superficial dermal layer, and that is areolar connective tissue. And then we have our reticular layer, which is deeper, and that's dense, irregular connective tissue, right? And then we have our hypodermis, which is that adipose connective tissue there. It houses some more blood vessels that nourish the skin, but the hypodermis is actually not considered a part of the skin, which is pretty interesting. Here is just we have our tissue structures here. First picture is the epidermis, obviously, and you can see those 5 layers, and then a little bit of the dermis. And the difference in those tissues from the epidermis to the dermis, and you can even see it here in the 2 layers of the dermis. You can see the difference between that areolar connective tissue there and then that dense irregular connective tissue. This is just a quick slide on our accessory structures, right? You have a hair follicle there. I'm not going to go into too much detail about that, but you have your glands. Our sebaceous glands provide oil and nourishment to our skin and hair so they don't get dry. The apocrine sweat glands, I do believe, are the ones in your armpits and areas of that nature. And then the other eccrine sweat glands, which are, everywhere else. You can really see them here too. I think this is a really cool picture. You can even see the lumen of the hair follicle. But moving on to the functions of the skin. So, of course, it is our first line of defense against chemicals, right? Biological pathogens, physical trauma. We have protection against water loss, which is very, very important. We have phagocytes and melanocytes, and those which, of course, are responsible for our pigment and protect against infection. You have regeneration, which I'll get into more about wound healing. But you have sensation, right? Pain, pressure, temperature. In that papillary layer of our dermis houses those sensory nerve endings. And you have your accessory structures, your sweat glands, your deep tissue receptors in the reticular layer. We have temperature regulation, okay, insulation, radiation, excretion. Those thermoreceptors responsible for, telling your body when to dilate or constrict those dermal blood vessels. Our arrector pili, popping up when we're cold. You have a synthesis of vitamin D, which is very, very important, which helps with calcium absorption. Moving on. This is just a little fun did you know. It's pretty heinous, actually. I think that this picture here, I think that's from the Mutter Museum, if I'm not mistaken. All right, going into wound healing, right? Let's see here. So, there's many things, many wounds that can occur to the skin, right? But we'll be talking more about, our shallow, our deeper wounds, and of course, burns. So, what is wound healing? It is the repairing of damaged tissue. Our skin does this all the time. Regeneration. So, for our shallow cuts, shallow cuts, right, that really only affect the epidermis, very superficial. Your skin regenerates and fills those gaps, using that regular process of proliferation and allowing those dead cells to shed, but that just happening at a faster rate. But for those, deeper wounds, the first thing that's going to happen, if you fall and you scrape your knee, the process that's going to happen is going to be these kind of 6 major things. You have hemostasis, which is when those affected blood vessels that are damaged, they're going to constrict, and eventually you're going to have the formation of a blood clot or a platelet plug. Sometimes you'll hear it called. That blood clot consists of fibrin, which is a protein. You have blood cells in there and some platelets also. Then you have inflammation occur, right? You have those white blood cells rush to the area. They clean the dirt. They eat those dead cells out. And then a scab forms once that all dries up. Scab forms, right? Then you have epithelialization or proliferation. That's when those epithelial cells are going to reproduce and fill the wound. New tissue is formed. And then another process called fibroplasia occurs, especially for these deeper wounds. It's going to be bound together by these deeper collagen fibers released by fibroblasts. And then finally, you're going to have remodeling or maturation, right? These collagen fibers readhering and retracting, kind of pulling back into this interstitial space and repairing what's damaged, pulling everything together, kind of giving it some more stability. And of course, you have excess collagenous fibers form, and you have a scar. This is a really cool video I found. This was actually a part of an older presentation I had made. This is, I think, over a span of 25 days total. Then we will get into burns. And so obviously burns, as we know, are going to be classified by the extent of tissue damage. We have our first degree burns. That is when the epidermis is injured. That can be a sunburn, that can be general redness, heat, inflammation, right? That can take days to weeks to heal, not ever really leaving a scar, right? Then you have second degree. They can range from shallower to more deeper partial thickness burns. That is when the entire epidermis and sometimes even some of the dermis, depending on how deep it is affected and destroyed. So you will have, there's possible blistering there. There's healing varies depending on how big. And of course, you don't often have a scar with a second degree if you are really good with keeping it clean and doing the appropriate steps. Third degree, you have that full thickness burn. This picture is pretty gross. That's when the epidermis and the dermis, as well as the accessory structures, are also damaged. Margins of wound may heal, right? The outside, sometimes even needing a skin graft. Some of I think I have some pictures in the next slide they can be a bit, brace yourself if, it's not the next slide, sorry about that. Okay, primary intention. So, for those more for more of the first and the shallower second degree, you have the healing process of primary intention, and this can also be like a puncture wound, you know what I mean, or something small to where the edges of the wound can easily come together. But in general, you have inflammation happen, you're having proliferation happen, and of course, maturation and remodeling. However, for the deep second degree and the third degree burns, it's more of a secondary intention. So, due to the severity of the wound and the burn, the edges is not going to come together. It's not going to approximate real nice like a surgical incision would or something like that. So instead, connective tissue is going to proliferate and granulation occurs, and that's going to fill the gap that way. So then we'll get into some of the pictures, and you can really tell the difference of tissue type, like especially if they're using a skin graft. But yeah, it's really interesting. And then I just wanted to talk really quick about the rule of nines, because I feel like you can't really talk about burns without talking about the rule of nines. So this is the body posteriorly and anteriorly, right? So if we're talking about the head, right, the front of the head, so right here is going to be 4.5, and the back of the head is also going to be 4.5. So if the whole head is burned, that is going to be 9%. And moving on to the arms. So each arm is going to be 9%. So that means the front of the arm, or the anterior of the arm, is going to be 4.5, and the posterior of the arm is going to be 4.5 also, equivaling 9% if the whole arm is burnt. The leg. The whole leg is 18%. So the front of the leg would be 9%, or the anterior view of the leg. The posterior view of the leg would also be 9%. So half of the leg would be 4.5. Talking about the torso. The torso, they half it. So you have the chest and the abdomen. The chest is 9%, the abdomen is 9%, so the whole torso is going to be 18%. Okay? Then you account for the back also, which is 18%. Top of the back, thoracic part will be 9%, and the lumbar and buttocks also 9%, making 18%. And then they do 1% for the groin, making 100%. So yeah, all right. I think that kind of concludes what I got going on here. I appreciate you for listening in. I hope you were able to take something from this. I know I was. Thank you again. Take care of your skin, always use sunscreen. Nourish it. Bathe. Thank you.